The Ugly Stepsister is a demented take on Cinderella that shifts perspective from the girl who eventually loses a slipper to the unfortunate sibling of the movie's title. This one is a dark drama with a surprising amount of body horror, so join us as we check out this Norwegian fairy tale. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is my ugly co-host, Tim.
How rude.
Welcome to the show. This is a horror movie podcast. We get together and talk about a film. It's that simple. And today we're discussing a vote winner that our patrons decided upon. I think for the first time ever, 100% of the vote went to one movie. So,
oh wow!
Yeah, congratulations to The Ugly Stepsister, which is what we're going to be talking about today. It is a Norwegian film, which I did hear getting a little bit of buzz in the middle of last year, and so I'm kind of glad it won, just to check it out and see what the fuss was about. Because I mean, one of the films it was up against was Him, which did get negative buzz, I guess I'll call that.
Yeah, I was gonna say also getting buzz, but not the kind of buzz you want to get.
No, not at all. So, yes. So I actually, it makes a lot of sense based on the title, but for the premise of this movie, I actually did not know going in that it was going to be like a twisted version of Cinderella. I did not know that before I watched it, and it was kind of like this weird. Like, my mind was doing like the math as it was playing out, and like 20 minutes, 30 minutes in, I'm like, there's something awfully familiar about some of this events in some ways. But so that's the basic premise. Is it's kind of twisted, I'll say body horror take on Cinderella. And again, it's Norwegian. We'll start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into the spoilers. And of course, if you're enjoying the show on YouTube, please do hit the like button. It helps us out a bunch if you do. And of course, you can support everything over at Patreon or via YouTube membership. But I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode.
And kind of missing the big part of the premise, which is just, it's Cinderella, but it's mostly from the point of view of the ugly stepsister.
Well, that title implied that, but yeah, you're right. Yeah,
right.
That's
just say
yeah, no, you're right. You're right. It's the main character is the ugly. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I mean it's been a while since I've dabbled in any Cinderella media, so my memory's foggy at best. But wasn't there 3 like awful stepsisters or ugly stepsisters in the classic story?
Well, it's kind of funny because, I mean, it's been a while since I've seen, like, the Disney version, but through just, like, I swear, no, nudging or, whatever on my part, but just randomly, my daughter picked Cinderella out as, like, her bedtime book to read tonight. So it's kind of funny. I was actually reading it to her, but in the Disney version, it is actually 2 stepsisters as well.
Okay.
But I mean, I have no idea. Like, they always change stuff for those versions.
Oh,
so.
To be fair, like this is like the vaguest like notion of a memory of him. Like, wasn't there 3 of these? But I mean, that could just be rule of threes that I'm thinking of. Like, I might be basing this on absolutely nothing. It's just a vague recollection.
And you might be thinking too, like, because essentially it's 3 villains, because it's the stepmom and the 2 stepsisters. So you might just be thinking of that. I did notice when I was reading the book too, the stepsisters did have like different names, which I don't know if they at Disney just wanted to Americanize them more or something. Although their names are like weird. It's like Drezaba or something. Like I'm like, oh, okay.
That sounds like the sort of name that would be in a Disney animated movie, to be fair.
Yeah.
But I mean, the thing is, obviously, it's not like completely like obvious. I think if you know going in, you can see the signs that it's a Cinderella take, like right from the start. But I think because it does start off in this other character, and because like names aren't used. I mean, again, maybe some of the names in this are in traditional versions of Cinderella that I just don't know about. But like, I wasn't recognizing any name really, across anything.
Well, I mean, not like people talk about Cinderella all the time, but yeah, like if you were like started telling me like, oh, that fairy tale about Elvira and Agnes and stuff, I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, Cinderella, of course.
Yes. And because obviously it comes from this sort of perspective, it doesn't necessarily present, because typically they're the evil like stepmother, the evil stepsister, or whatever. They are not initially presented, and arguably even throughout the whole thing, are they ever presented necessarily as just evil or two-dimensional in that sense. Because it's coming from a different perspective, it goes from a very different tactic. So don't get me wrong, there's a certain point where you realize, wait, we're building up to a ball, and like the way things start shaping up, you're like, oh, you get what this is doing. Now again, most people probably go in knowing that it's going to be a twisty take on Cinderella. I did not, so it was kind of a journey of discovery as the movie was playing out.
Yeah, like I heard about it before, so like I knew what it was going in, but if I hadn't known, it probably would have taken me at least a little bit.
Anyway, we'll get into things and see how we feel about everything.
Yeah, I think once she looks into the barn and sees Agnes and the stable boy, I think that's when it hit me like, oh, this is Cinderella. Okay.
You're bordering on spoilers here, Tim. I'm tempted to give you a citation here.
I don't know. I thought it was a funny enough joke, and who cares?
Citation, because it's definitely not something that's typically in Cinderella. I'll say that much.
Well, that's why I didn't go into too much detail.
Yeah.
If you know, you know.
I suppose one of the first things to say about this is that it is not like a full-on horror story in the sense that it, like, because part of me was thinking, like, oh, how are they going to, like, how is this going to change as it evolves? And part of me was like, is this going to, like, sort of, like, twist it into, like, a Carrie where the ugly stepsister goes absolutely homicidal by the end and, like, goes on a rampage? Or whatever. And it never quite does anything that extreme, but it's a lot of, like I said, body horror is a big part of it, so there's a lot of, like, really uncomfortable, like, gore, and I don't even know if gore is the right word always, but like you'll definitely know what I'm talking about when you see the scenes that are going to come up.
Yeah, there's multiple scenes that made me wince. Like I was like, I don't want to look at this.
Yeah, I had to look away a couple times, and I don't usually have to say that. This was more disturbing to me than any like stabbings or any like anything like that. So
let's just say. Yeah, when there's, let's say, like, the eyebrow scene, like, when that starts, I was kind of like, oh, did someone call my name? Should I just look over here?
Does a child need their father? Anyone? Yeah. No? Anyone crying? Anyone want to just, like, hit something really hard quickly and start crying so I can leave, please? Yeah, so there's a lot of that, and then I think the other thing that also caught me off guard was the nudity in this is, like, it's not, like, frequent by any stretch, but, like, there's, like, one or two moments where, like, something suddenly just is on camera that I was not expecting, and I was like, oh, okay, all right, this is going further than most movies do with nudity, so that caught me off guard. So sure. I guess that's your content warnings if you're considering watching it.
Yeah, this might not be a movie that like you want to bring your Nana out and be like, oh Nana, like remember we watched Cinderella as kids? Let's watch this together. Like,
yeah. To be fair, I think you could say that about almost anything we do on the horror movie podcast Screams After Midnight. There's none of them are ones you want to take Nana to.
Yeah. It's a hashtag not safe for nanas. That's
which was also Tim's nickname when he was in college.
Was I a nana chaser?
Yeah, you were chasing nannies.
Sure.
No, nanas, not nannies. Nannies doesn't sound as weird. But it's not. I mean, it's really specific. But like a nanny can be any age. But yeah, you were after 60 and up was your. What was your age range?
I mean, we're all adults. It's all good.
Anyway, so I guess the other big thing to mention about this is that, the tactic that it takes here is kind of trying to view the story through an allegory for the pressures that women face and how they have to like present themselves to feel like they're attractive, to feel like they're being seen, and capturing the attention of a suitor. So, which does make a lot of sense to try and do Cinderella through that lens, given it lends itself to that story, which is why you feel a bit more sympathetic for the ugly one this time versus your traditional, the pretty one who's magically just perfect and the slipper and all that other nonsense. But we'll get into everything as we go.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that that's something women have to go through.
Tim's making a joke. I want to point out that Tim's making a joke. I don't want anyone to take you seriously right now, okay? All right. Do you know what you're making me think of? I remember the exact line is, but remember that scene in Wolf of Snow Hollow where Jim Cummings turns to his like female partner because he's like the sheriff and I think she's the deputy, and he's like, I'm just realizing that women have got a lot of things they need to go through, or something like that. And then the way she just kind of looks back at him and she's like, yeah. Like, are you just getting that now at the age of 40? All right. Anyway, so that's enough preamble. Tim, what did you think of The Ugly Stepsister?
So this is kind of funny because like earlier in the year, I'd also, because I think this came out somewhat early in the year, like maybe Marchish, kind of area. And I'd also been hearing it getting some buzz. So I actually had started watching it at some point last year. And then I think I ended up just kind of shutting it off because honestly, I wasn't digging it. Like I wasn't too far in, like I was probably like, 15-ish minutes or so. And I was like, I kind of feel like I get what they're doing and it's not for me. So honestly, I wasn't super pumped going back in to watch it, but I gotta admit, I'm kind of glad I did because I actually ended up liking it. Like, I guess maybe I was a bit more invested because we were watching it for the show, so maybe I was paying attention a bit more, or maybe just kind of after getting past that hump, started to get more on the movie's wavelength.
What was the hum? Did you turn it on and go, oh, this woman's ugly, I can't be watching this, that's too ugly for Tim, turn it off?
That's another thing too, like maybe we should mention that, like of course this is doing the movie thing where it's like, hey, here's like the ugly stepsister, like everyone that looks at her is kind of like, oh, and
she's perfectly an attractive woman. Yes, there's nothing wrong with her.
She's it's like she has maybe like kind of a weird hairdo, but I'm guessing that was just a little bit more normal for the time. But yeah, I guess going in, and one of the reasons why I think I had stopped it prematurely the first time is just because I kind of assumed like, oh, this is just going to be a very bleak movie where, this woman is basically getting like, accosted for being ugly and having to do all these body horror modifications things for like almost 2 hours, and it's just going to be kind of like depressing and sad. And I mean, obviously, that's like a part of it, but actually I was surprised like that the movie ends up being like kind of charming and even like pretty funny at parts. I was actually surprised how, like a lot of the, it's like dark humor, but there's a lot of like humor that ended up shining through. And
I would go as far to say that it's maybe more of a dark comedy than it is a horror movie, if I was to say what genre it falls into more. Yeah, no,
definitely. And also like, the whole idea of like, oh, let's take a thing and see it from the, villain's perspective and stuff is like not like I guess a story idea or whatever that I'm like super interested in. But I thought they did actually a really interesting job. I think, Elvira, her journey is like, there's a lot to it and a lot we can talk about. It's kind of hard to talk about some things like without spoilers, but I was kind of surprised because I was viewing her one way at the beginning of the movie and then a totally different way, like, by the end of it. And one of the things I kind of want to discuss when we get into spoilers is if we think like her journey is kind of, her own fault, or, I mean, or like how much of what ends up happening is, like inside of her from the start, or, if all of this is from, like you're kind of saying before, these societal pressures and, the constant, like, people poking her and telling her like, oh, you need to change this and do this and stuff. Like, I think there's a lot of really fascinating stuff. And, and then in terms of like the horror elements, there actually was more than I thought. Like, because again, it's not like there's a big gory death scene every 5 minutes or anything. It's not that kind of horror movie, but I thought like, okay, maybe we'll get like 1 or 2 little scenes here and there, but there actually was, I think, a pretty decent amount of like gross bits and stuff throughout it, and yeah, it moved pretty well. So yeah, there's actually quite a bit that I liked about it. I was surprised. The music too is really good. I actually thought like the music like really complemented it. So yeah, for once, our patrons actually did something right and voted for something worthwhile. Can you believe it?
So I like the movie a lot. I think, I guess the one difference to you, and again, maybe it's the context of which you watched it the first time, is that I kind of knew quickly that I was into it. And I think a big part of that was both the audio, because I agree the music's fantastic. It does that thing where it's contrasting what's on screen quite well, because it's a period piece, kind of indeterminate time period, which I guess makes sense because Cinderella's kind of like a fairy tale, type thing where it's just vaguely in a time period. But it's got a lot of synth. It's got a lot of it's overly dramatic in ways that I found really compelling. It's something that I quite like, especially when you've got stories about like a teenager or someone who like is over dramatizing stuff in their head. It made me think a little bit of the Richard Ayoade film Submarine, and how that has like really dramatic like orchestral music when he's just talking about his world imploding, but it's just dumb teenage shit. It gave me kind of vibes of that in some ways, but cooler because it's synth.
Yeah, it fits, even though it's like obviously, synth wasn't around that time or whatever, but it weirdly fits. Like, I don't know, the movie, even though we're doing this like old timey thing, but we're having this kind of like electronic-y synth score, but it like surprisingly fits very well. I was actually like, I'm not always someone that music really stands out to, but this was one where it was definitely like, oh, I like this. I'm liking this a lot.
Yeah, and I think the movie looks great as well. Like, very quickly, I was drawn in by the level of, I don't know, production value. I get like, just like, it feels like they had good sets. They had a good big mansion that looked old timey. They got all the costumes and all that. But the movie's also very well lit. There's a lot of like scenes in darkness with just like a lantern, kind of like illuminating the place or stuff like that. It felt visually stimulating the entire time. So both the visuals and the audio both were kind of like just hitting it immediately for me. And I was like, okay, I'm into how this looks and feels. Let's see where it goes. And as the movie progressed, I found it very easy to be engaged in what was happening. It has kind of that, dark comedy where you're following kind of the character who's maybe going through the tragedy rather than the happy story. And like obviously the whole setup of it is that her mother's marrying this guy, so she's got like a new stepsister. She's already got like her own like by blood sister that she's moving in with and all that. But the body horror stuff was very effective, more effective than arguably a lot of movies I watched, because I had to turn away at some points because it was making me wince. And maybe that's perfect in a weird way, because it's like the whole analogy for it is like what women put themselves through, the men never even think about. The idea that this disgusts me more than almost anything else any other movie makes me like react to is something. Now, to be fair, I do think what they show in this obviously is not what like some of the things she does are not what people do, certainly not now anyway, but it's this extreme end in a sort of an analogy kind of way, so I think it works out in that sense. And I think it's well paced. I was engrossed the whole time, and it got like a little bit more mental as it went on, because it felt like she was getting more desperate to do more crazy shit. So even though it was like, oh, we're kind of following Cinderella to a point, there was also this feeling like it might deviate wildly at any given moment if it wants to. Like, if it wants to make some big point by the end, it might completely just shatter where that story normally goes. And I was kind of like on the hinges waiting for that, but very effective and very engrossing. Yes, the patrons did something right for a change. I agree. That's the sentiment coming out of this.
I agree. I don't know if I have a ton to say before spoilers, but that's
right. We did a lot of preamble before we got to impressions, I suppose. So there's less to discuss before we get to spoilers. But I guess the typical things to hit are performances and I think Leah Myren plays Elvira, the ugly stepsister, the main character. I think she's really solid. She has to go through a lot of different kind of, stages of the character where she's technically at her ugliest at one point, and then they've kind of beaten her into shape at one point, and like, how does she change her posture? How does she act differently because of that? There's a lot of fantasy sequences where she's daydreaming about like the prince coming for her, and so there's a lot of different like versions of her we kind of get to see performance wise throughout the course of the movie.
Yeah, no, I thought she really carried the film. Like, she was fun to follow, and again, she just has like a very interesting journey. So I mean, kudos to her. It was a great performance, and it probably wasn't like very easy, just to like, so much of the movie is like people like pointing out like her flaws and like judging her and stuff like that. That can be hard, but like you definitely like feel for her in a lot of scenes, and then by the time you get to the place at the end, it kind of feels like, oh, like I can see how she got to this point.
Yeah, and then the Cinderella character, Agnes, who does actually eventually get named Cinderella a couple times, but it's quite late on in the film, so I'm not sure what the...
Well, I was kind of surprised, because I was kind of thinking, probably like at that point or whatever, that, okay, like, we get that this is a take on Cinderella, but we're not going to go like full Cinderella, but then at one point they just like blared out like, they call her Cinderella or something, which, if I remember from the story correctly, I think there was something about like Cinderella is not her real name, but that's like a nickname because of like she would clean the chimneys or something and get like all this like soot and cinder on her, so they call her Cinderella, something like that.
Yeah, as soon as they said it, I'm like, okay, we know that's not her real name, so I immediately thought, oh, maybe that's never been her real name, even in the classic stories. So yeah, that was immediately what my mind went to as well. The actress playing Agnes, her name is Thea Sofie Loch Næss, which just gave me a chuckle. It's probably not pronounced that way, because technically the Ness has like that I don't even know what you call it, but the A and the E that are kind of stuck together.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So I don't know how you pronounce that, but it's just okay. Caught my eye.
One of our Norwegian listeners will let us know how to properly pronounce.
We may have a Norwegian listener. That's just not out of the realm of possibility.
No, of course not.
And then you've got the stepmother, of course, is maybe the other sort of big role. Maybe aside from the prince, who comes into it a little bit more as the movie goes on. But yeah, I think it is also notable in here that it is predominantly a female cast, and like obviously there's men there when they need to be there, but they're very much kind of like off in the distance. I mean, we do get a glimpse of how they really are versus how they present themselves. It's just a small fleeting moment or two, but it does kind of, it's like, okay, yeah, this is definitely coming from a female perspective, and notably the director is a female director. So. And this is our first feature-length film, I think, by the looks of it. It should have some shorts before now, but the director's name is Emilie Blichfeldt, just to give her credit there.
Yeah, it is funny, like, the few times they cut to, like, just some, like, random, like, male characters, and they're almost acting like, background characters in, like, American Pie or something. Like, they're just, like making, like, these, like, lewd comments and gestures.
Oh yeah, like this definitely paints like there's a lot of things like around the edges of this that like are like, yeah, you would never normally put this in a Cinderella story at all. Like it cuts to one point where the prince's friends are discussing if they prefer virgins or I'll say experienced women, I guess, and they're just, and it's a really crude debate that is just kind of awful to hear, but like it's like, oh, maybe ended up with the prince isn't that great a thing, actually. I mean, it sounds like he might be a bit of a dick, but all right.
Yeah, which is kind of like another funny, like, contrast that they do, because, like, part of the movie is, Elvira, like, she's kind of obsessing over the prince, and she has, like, this book of poetry that he wrote or something, and she has this kind of, like, idealized romantic version of him, but then, a lot of times when you see him, he does seem like he's just kind of a dick and has, like really annoying dick friends and stuff. So it's like another, I guess, example of like the difference between like who you are and who like you're trying to like, you know, put yourself out in the world.
Or on the flip side, it's like, you know, your idea of someone that you've kind of created yourself in your head and your ideal version of them versus what they actually are. Anyway, let's get into it, shall we? So we'll say spoilers then from this point on for The Ugly Stepsister. You have been warned. So here we go. Henceforth. Can I ask a question, Tim? Now, admittedly, it's a little bit vague as to when this is set, but when did braces become a thing? Because I was feeling like braces are a lot more modern than everything else in this movie. But she has braces because ugly.
Yeah, right. I think what they do a good job of is there's a lot of stuff that I would have thought like, oh no, that's like a modern convention, but they do it in like an old-timey way. Like, you know, nose jobs, I think of, oh yeah, that's probably like something we only started doing in like, you know, the last like 40, 50 years or whatever. But
the way they're done now, certainly, you know, but
that's what I'm saying. Like the way they're doing it feels like the old timey version of that, you know.
Sure, but like I think I believe this version of a nose job existed, whereas I'm not sure there was an old version of braces.
Sure,
you know,
that's fair. Yeah, and to be fair, like the braces end up being, I guess, like the least. The braces are kind of weird because they like there's not really much body horror when it comes to that part. Like they kind of just like she has them in the beginning, then they just remove them.
Yeah, that's fair.
So like I don't know, I was expecting there to be something maybe you know, a bit more jarring with them, unless it's maybe just to contrast like, oh, see, like she has, you know, she got braces, now she has nice teeth, and then to kind of juxtapose it to the end when she like falls and now she has like a like chipped jagged tooth and stuff. I don't know.
So the movie, you know, starts with a setup which is, you know, she's daydreaming, but they're going to this new mansion because their mother, who's a widow, is marrying this older guy who's a widower who has a daughter, of course, named Agnes, and everything's very pleasant at first. They have this little wedding. The first time Agnes and Elvira see each other, they're smiling at each other. It's all very pleasant. However, that night at dinner, the old man croaks. He just croaks in the middle of dinner.
Real quick though, before that, because you're saying everything's pleasant, and I agree for the most part, but why does he just chuck a piece of cake at her?
That's a good question. To be fair, it's presented as if he's a bit of a jokester because Agnes keeps telling him to calm down, old man, and then he just kind of like flicks it at Elvira. But they all laugh about it. You know, Elvira laughs it off, and they're all having a giggly time. Yeah,
like it doesn't feel like it's done at like with malice or anything, but it just like was kind of weird, and I don't know. I'd be kind of pissed if someone just threw cake at me.
I mean, later on, people make cracks about how cake's her favorite food because she's so fat, and she's not fat. Like, you know, she's not. No. she's not like the skinniest person ever, and that's about it. That is the extent you could say anything about her not being slim. She is a perfectly normal sized woman. So the old man dies, right? He just croaks at the dinner table, and Agnes is screaming out loud, and you know, things go from there. And things take a bit of a sour turn here where Agnes is like crying in her bed and she's like, oh, you know, my father let you people into our lives and you're here to poach all of these things, but he only married your mother because of money. And Elvira's like, what? And she runs off because she realizes that this means that he must not have had money left, because otherwise why would Cinderella say that? So sure enough,
that's kind of funny.
Yeah, she runs into like, you know, I guess it's the scene where like the will's being read or something, and there's all these guys here to collect, and they're like, yeah, well, we're going to take all of the stock, all the cattle, everything that, you know, was worth anything to this guy, like, is going with us because he owed so much money to people. Basically, you know, the themes of the movie are really set up here where Elvira's talking to her mother, and she's like, oh, you know, like, it's not so bad, mom, blah, blah, blah. And Elvira's mum, her name's Rebecca, is the stepmom, or well, her mum, but Cinderella's stepmom. She just says, oh, I was, you know, do you know how hard it was to find this guy to want to marry me? No one wants me with my saggy boobs. I'm old, and she's not even that old. She was much younger than this other guy. But again, it's this idea of the heightened like expectations, like she at least perceived. I mean, it's not even perceived. I'm sure they're true as well. But like this idea of like what the world expects of a potential wife. Especially in this day and age where it seems like the whole idea, because Elvira's like, oh, well, I could get married, as if, you marry into money. That's the sort of time period we're in here, is that you have to find a rich man to like then take care of everyone. And her mom's just kind of like, if you looked in a mirror, Elvira, right? And your young sister, she's not even started bleeding yet, but you're hopeless. Like, we're never getting anywhere with you. So that's it. And it's not until that a random I don't know, messenger, whatever you want to call him, is like around on a carriage and says, oh, there's going to be a ball in 4 months. The prince is looking for a wife. Come and sign up. And Agnes signs up. Elvira runs out and she's standing there and she puts her name in as well. And she's like, Mom, I'm going to the ball. I can maybe find a husband. And thus setting up the plot and the end goal of the movie, which is we have to she's all that Elvira into marriage material so the prince will notice her and all the horrors that are going to come with that. And that's where it goes.
Real quick, I forgot to ask this, just curious, when the dad dies, did you think that there's maybe a little possibility or something that the wife had something to do with it? Because like obviously like she's like, oh, it's like the evil stepmom or anything. And I was just curious if you felt there's maybe a little something there that she might have done, or if it's all on board, I guess.
It was all on board, all in the up and up. I guess I didn't really think about that. I can see why you're maybe suggesting it, especially in hindsight with how far she goes. I think up front, one, I didn't realize it was Cinderella yet, so I wasn't really thinking about it in terms of evil stepmother. But I guess I think they were also playing it a bit more down to earth, and I think because the rest of the movie's about you have to find a man to marry so that we're set for life, it kind of feels like she was willing to just be in the marriage to me and like just get everything when he eventually dies. Now if they turn around and revealed to me, oh, she actually also killed him because she wanted all of his stuff for herself, like immediately, it wouldn't shock me, but I don't think that they were necessarily hinting at that either.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was something that popped in my head that I was like, oh, I kind of wonder if I guess as I was watching it, I was like, oh, I wonder if there'll be a hint or a revelation later, but nothing comes. But I feel like it's not out of the realm of possibility if you want to think something like that could happen. Yeah.
So I guess one of the things about the movie's perspective is that because we're following Elvira and her going through all of her like horrors to try and become what was wanted in a wife, it does kind of make you sympathize with her a lot more. In fact, it's probably quite late in the movie before she does something that feels kind of bad to someone else. Like, for the most part, she's making lots of horrible choices about herself, but it's very, like, you feel really bad for her because it's like, oh, she thinks she has to do this, she thinks she has to be this, she thinks this is her only option. Like, you're kind of along with her sympathetically the entire time, up until a point where she gets a little bit more petty with Agnes and things change a little bit.
Yeah, that was one thing I thought was really interesting because, like, as I'm watching it in the beginning, my thought was, oh, like, she's going to be this completely innocent, sympathetic character, and then the movie is going to be, like, something where it's like, oh, like, if you look at through her perspective, like, Cinderella was actually the real villain or whatever, and yeah, she's innocent and blah, 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 and I don't know, I don't think I would have liked it that much, so I actually like what they did a lot more, which is like, oh no, she's totally the villain, it's just like, yeah, I don't know, like halfway, 3/4 of the movie through is like when she just kind of like snaps, like, because everything she's doing at first is just seems more out of like desperation, so you actually like feel bad for her, and then it's not till she kind of just like really loses it like towards the end that you're like, oh no, she's completely like bonkers and out of it and willing to do bad things.
Yeah, but even then, it's only like one or two things to other people. Most of it's still to herself. So I feel like the idea though that like, yeah, like thinking Cinderella might be the villain of the movie because of the perspective. Like I thought they might go that route as well, because she does say one or two kind of mean things or catty things like right after her dad dies, but you kind of realize as the movie's going on, no, her dad just died. She wasn't in a good place and she feels trapped with this new family. Like she has a very understandable kind of position. And then as the movie goes on, I think it did a pretty good job of presenting her as a fairly, like, not necessarily like a super good character in the sense of like, like she's an angel or anything like that. But I think it presented her in a very sort of neutral, no, she's just like a woman who's like, because even some of the things that she gets done to her make you feel really bad for her and make you realize, oh, she's just been like victimized or called out for something that should not be a problem. But again, the misogyny of like the time period this is set, and again, it's not a real time period, and really it's it's kind of made up, just like generic old times. But that what it's going for. I mean, just to sort of get to it, one of the things that's revealed as the movie goes on is that when she first introduces Elvira to the stable boy, he's kind of awkward and he walks away and he's about the same age as them. After the father's death, there's a whole sequence where Elvira sees her go up to the stable boy and kiss him, and they're like, no, she doesn't see that. She obviously sees stuff later, but like we see her kissing the stable boy, and it's like, oh, they've been in a relationship, but she's also like prepping for this ball to try and like win the prince. And it's like a kind of a scene where she's like, hey, I'm going to have to try and marry the prince. It's really the only option I have, which is sad in and of itself. Is like, I can't be with the person I want. I have to go with the person that has money. And not because she's greedy, but just because that's the world she lives in. So that's really sad. But once we do see more of their relationship and Elvira like sneaks in and sees them having sex, which for the record, like the way this scene starts where it's a very dark image, but you're like, is that someone bent over? Is that an asshole? Is that a vagina? Like you're kind of like squinting. You're like, I think that's what that is. And then it just smash cuts to an erect penis, and I'm like, whoa, what are we doing? And then it's very suggestive that the stable boy is going over to her, and they start having sex. And Elvira makes a noise at one point, so they turn around, know she's there, but it kind of wraps up. But the reason why I'm bringing this up in relation to like Cinderella's like character arc here is that like the stepmom calls her a whore and like really like runs her down for this, and then other characters as well not too long after, when they see her, goes, oh, you must be a whore, and like say things, and I'm like, wait, you're saying she's a whore and she's damaged goods because she's had a boyfriend? Like, I was finding my sympathy towards this character really, really shift over the course of how she is being treated because she happens to be in a relationship with someone, and that she dared to have sex before marriage or before giving herself to a prince or whatever it is. I think that was a really big turning point for how I viewed that character in this movie, because it's especially after that where they really start to treat her badly, where it's like, hey, you're just like the maid who cleans stuff now, you're going to be dirty all the time, you're not allowed to do these things. They don't go super into like the Cinderella thing where they're cackling at her and like demanding she do this and this, but you just kind of always see her around doing chores. Like it's kind of like almost implied, like this is all you're good for now because you're just the whore of the house. Yeah,
actually I think it's like a really good choice where it doesn't feel like they become these cartoon villains that are like constantly screaming at her and stuff, but instead they do that thing where they're just like constantly like you can tell, just kind of like telling her what to do and stuff. Like a scene that I thought was like interesting was like the girls need dresses for the ball and stuff, so you just see like the mom is like, by the way, like, oh, you have some old dresses you're not using anymore, like I'm just gonna give them to the girls or whatever. And especially I think that's like the same time too where she's like begging them like, can we please just bury my dad, which is in a way it's kind of darkly funny. Like later you find out that like, yeah, the dad's corpse is just like still laying around.
Still in a room, yeah. Which I should mention here, just since you brought it up. There's apparently, I didn't see this, but there's a post-credit scene where his corpse is still just there rotting, like
really?
after the credits. Yeah, so
that is really funny, actually.
I was not expecting a post-credit scene in this one, so I didn't stick around. I just happened to notice when I was reading about the movie afterwards.
Oh, nice. But yeah, that's like it's very dark that. Yeah, they can't afford a burial because she's like fixing up her old dresses and giving her daughter nose jobs. And
every penny that the stepmother has is going in to try and make Elvira a candidate for marriage. It's like, I really want to use a word that I can't use because we're on YouTube and I don't want to get demonetized. Although I said the word whore a lot a minute ago, so it may get demonetized anyway. But I think because that's kind of still relatively early, where I guess like maybe you're starting to sympathize with her at that point. But it definitely presents a character where it's like, hey, you think she's going to be the villain just because she's the alternative or the opposite to the main character, but as the movie goes on, you're like, nah, both of these characters actually have hard deals. They both have like, it's basically taking that idea of like, yeah, the ugly stepsister who is kind of traditionally just a villain in this story is like, yeah, but what about all the pressure she's feeling to like, you have to go and get a husband here, you have to be this, you have to be perfect and go do all these things. And that's what this movie's about. It's about showing like, okay, Cinderella's the one who's disregarded and treated like shit, but the one who's like, oh, you must succeed, you must do this, you must be perfect, like they also don't necessarily have an easy time
right,
necessarily, and I think that's what this movie's really getting into. So now I think Cinderella's like, I think that's probably the most interesting stuff to me about her character is the idea that she is in a sexual relationship, and the movie like makes it very explicit by showing you actually genitals when they're doing stuff. But I think that's kind of the it's like, yeah, imagine like the shame of like a sort of like conservative person if they're telling Cinderella, but they're like having to say, oh, Cinderella was banging the stable boy before all this, and like the reason why she's shunned so much is because she dares to have a sex life, she dares to be sexually active. I think that stuff is super interesting in here.
Absolutely. And it's I'm kind of surprised that they never really returned to him. Like I was wondering if at the end it's like, okay, she gets a prince, but again, we're kind of doing some stuff differently. I don't know if like she's gonna be like, psych, or like realize like, oh, the prince isn't that great either, and then run off with the stable boy. But because like she even says like, oh, like she loves him and stuff, but it's I guess just not meant to be.
Well, there's a quick scene where after they're caught and they're chastising her, there's a scene where he's kicked out and he's basically naked. Right. And it's like the next day, so I'm not really sure why he was naked necessarily, other than maybe they caught him in the bath or something. But he's basically just like run off, and they don't have a stable boy anymore. So he's just gone, basically, for the rest of the movie.
I'd be loath if I didn't bring up the fact that you're mentioning you're kind of surprised to see like an erect penis and everything, which I thought that was surprising as well. But like what really got me more was the end of the scene where like after everything they just kind of cut to a shot of I don't know what the proper word is because I don't know if this would potentially get us demonetized.
If in doubt, just say the medical term. It's okay.
Oh yeah, like you just get like a big old wad of sperm, just close up. I
don't know if anyone's ever said wad of sperm before. Dear.
New T-shirts? I don't know.
Certainly not. What an incredible wad of sperm. Yeah, so it's very explicit with the sex stuff, and I think that's the thing, is that it's presented in this very kind of like in the shadows. Like, is this kind of forbidden? But should it be forbidden because these two actually care about each other? And it's just but you've also got this idea of the voyeurism aspect to it, of like Elvira watching. And like maybe this is the first time she's ever seen a penis before. Like, it wouldn't surprise me. She's hardly on the Pornhub, like, every night, checking out the goods. Yeah. And it's not the only scene of her in the movie, like, sort of spying and maybe catching a glimpse of something at some point. So I mean, and it's not even the first time in the movie I was surprised by nudity. Not that this other one was like a shocking type of nudity. Like I think an erect penis is a lot more like, whoa, you don't usually see that in movies. But it did just suddenly cut to Elvira at one point with her clothes off, and I was like, whoa, okay, all right, we're doing that. But obviously it thematically fits into the movie, because what she's doing in that scene is she's like looking at herself in the mirror, and she's like, and the camera starts lingering, and like all the, I guess we'll say imperfections, like, a little bit of a fold here, a bit of curvy bit here, and it's kind of like her like looking at all of her aspects and sort of like, and she pulls like a half-eaten like bit of cake out of her drawer. This idea that she sneaks junk food when she's not supposed to, and she's like clearly feeling like guilty about it and like shamed by it and whatever. And it's like, all right, you get what this is doing.
Yeah. Again, this was another one of like the harder scenes to watch in the movie, because again, she's just so ugly. It was just like, get this up. Come on.
Tim's joking. I feel like you need to specify here a little bit, or at least put a bit of stank in your voice so it's clearly sarcasm.
Yeah, I gotta raise the stank level a little bit.
Yeah, raise the stank level. Stank levels are a must. So I mean, let's go through Elvira's whole like process then of all the things she does or gets done to her.
Yeah, so like and again, this is all kind of like at the behest of her mom. She's kind of like leading the charge with this stuff. The first thing we have is the nose job, which this stuff I thought was all kind of funny with the doctor. Again, there's
a lot of build up to it where he's like, oh, and this nose, I'm going to tame it. I'm going to tame this beast.
Yeah. This is kind of interesting too, because like I don't know, like to me it didn't really seem like there was like huge differences like with the noses, and like I don't know, just like noses. I mean, again, maybe standards were different back then or whatever, because I don't know, but like I don't know, I feel like the very, like I can't think of many times in my life where I've looked at someone and been like, oh, the nose, that nose is horrible. Like especially
but alternatively, Tim, nose jobs are actually like not just a thing, that they're like a very common thing that people who have the money to get nose jobs do. So clearly people are self-conscious about their noses.
That's very true, yeah. But I thought this the guy playing the doctor was real funny. Like you were saying, he's like very like over the top and like animated. And then so the nose job is basically it just is kind of like a hammer and a chisel that he just takes to her. And this was something that it's very simple, like, but I don't know. It is like.
Tim, it's the way that after, like, so he has her on this like a dentist chair almost, right? And he's got her strapped down, and he's got the chisel over the sort of the bridge of her nose. But he's counting down, and on 3 he hammers it, right, and like Elvira screams out. But what made it darkly hilarious to me was the way he kind of stood in pose and looked over at the mum like, it's working. I'm doing good work here. Right, like, I'm like, right, just give it a second. And again, and he hammers it again. And it's just brutal. It's like, you're mutilating this girl's face with a chisel, is what they're doing here.
Stuff like this is just so funny to me because, we'll just watch something where some psycho killer in a mask, like, puts his hand through someone's head and, like, rips it off, and the spinal cord's, like, dripping with blood, and their eyeballs pop out, and we kind of just, like, yawn, like, oh, ho hum. And then, like, this, like, which on its surface is like seems like pretty simple and tame, is just so much more effective. And yeah, like you're saying, like there's so much of it is like the presentation, the kind of like simplicity, and like the sound effects, and then how it kind of takes her a second, then she just starts like screaming. Like it's very brutal to watch.
Yeah, although to be fair, like as far as the stuff that made me feel uncomfortable to look at, this was not one of them. This was still just, metal into flesh. I can do metal into flesh typically quite happily. It's the later stuff. Yeah, but it's even, I think it's when she's looking at herself in the mirror where she sort of notices like a pimple or something on her nose, and she just sort of, we get this close up of her squeezing, and like ooze is coming out of her, like, and when I say her nose, I don't mean her nostrils, I mean out of like a pimple or something, and it was disgusting, and I had to actually look away, and I'm like, this is clearly not as violent or anything as anything else, but he's just gross. And I'm like, oh, stop this now.
I think like some people like weirdly like that though. Like I don't know. Like,
freaks. A lot of them.
But then after that, she's like wearing this kind of like metal nose brace over her face, which is kind of like I think that's like the image on the like cover of the movie and stuff. That's kind of like the iconic look.
Yeah, one of them. I think the one I keep seeing is it's just like the slipper and like the like her foot and then like the butcher knife like sort of in the floor next to it. I think that's the one I keep seeing. But yeah, it's almost like a. When I say Hannibal Lecter mask, I don't mean it's actually covering all that, but just the sort of like material and like the kind of the overall aesthetic feels very Hannibal Lecter, but it's just covering her nose. And she has it on for most of the movie after this because it's like, oh, her nose needs to heal over the next 3 months. So there it is.
So then, so that's the first big one. And then are the eyelashes next, or does she take the tapeworm?
No, eyelashes I think are, well, the order's, I don't know, the order's not actually, I guess, that important, but like...
Because I figured she might bring up the tapeworm earlier, but I think she maybe takes it a little later or something like that.
Yeah, the eyelashes are like, because he offers the like extensions and the eyelashes like early on, and like the mum says no at first because of money, but then like we just cut to a scene where again she's strapped down, it's like an operating table, and there's a moment here as well where he's like, hey, maybe we should talk to your mother about getting your breasts done, like my nurse here. And like she looks over and like the cleavage of the nurse is like right in her face. But again, it's just this idea of like the thing, oh, you have to be better, you have to be bigger, you have to do this. Well, only for boobs though. Everything else has to be smaller because that's the you know, you have to be anorexic with big boobs. That's the image that is desired in the modeling magazines and whatnot. In other words, magazines at this time. But you know what I mean?
I feel like you can probably get away with like a lot of stuff below your face too, because they're all just wearing these like gigantic frilly dresses. Like, who's even really gonna, tell?
I mean, yeah, they're hiding more in this time period, I suppose, than any other time, I guess. But yeah, this like, especially just like a sewing needle going like through the eyelids and like the bottom eyelids, and it's just this is one that I had to look away in because it was just kind of so like no, this is nasty.
Yeah, I don't like eye stuff, so like anything getting like too close to an eye, I really don't like it.
Yeah, and it was just doing these like really sort of extreme close-ups as well, and it was very kind of in your face and like multiple ways. So the rough stuff here, but effective. So I can't fault it. Like it was doing its job and making it all work. So. That's a big one. There's a scene as well around here where, because she goes to like a finishing school, which is basically just, we're going to learn to dance to impress the prince, right? So, and she's basically told, oh, you go to the back. I don't want you up front. You're useless. You're ugly. You're bad at this. Get away from me. But the other teacher who's doing like counseling or whatever is like a lot more, I don't know, like, oh, you've got a potential, there's beauty inside you. She's the one that gives her the tapeworm egg because she's the one who's like, oh, you've got so much potential. Oh, you're beautiful. Because she takes off the nose mask and it looks kind of like, it's kind of in silhouette almost, so you can't get a good look at it, but it looks like bruised and bloody and like really nasty. And she's like, oh, you're beautiful. And I'm like, is she? Right now? I don't know. I feel like you're saying something that's not correlating to this like mutilation that's occurred on her nose. And it's like, okay, she's been given this, and she tells her sister about it. And I think the sister's an interesting character because the younger sister, is clearly looking over at a lot of this stuff that's happening, and clearly is kind of like, why are you doing this to yourself? Why do you think you need to be this? Like the younger sister's almost represents, I won't say the audience per se, but certainly a more progressive attitude compared to everyone else's views on women in this movie.
I'm kind of glad that nothing really bad happens to her because, yeah, she does seem like kind of like one of the only voices of reason. And then, like you said, the mom has the line early on where she's like, oh, she's not even bleeding yet. And then later on in the movie, we see like she wakes up and there's like a spot of blood on her bed. And I was kind of nervous there that I was like, oh no, like the mom's going to find out and like, start to pimp her out too or something. But I don't know. But luckily she seems to leave the movie relatively unscathed, and it's kind of interesting too because again, at least with the story of Cinderella that I'm aware of, it seemed like both stepsisters are kind of like equally cruel and everything, and I don't know, like she seems pretty like an okay person. I mean, I guess we don't see like a ton of her, like, but it seems like they're trying to make her out to be
but she's
not that bad.
She's always a voice of reason, and then obviously at the ending, she's kind of the one who's there for her in a way that no one else is. So, like they do a good job of like having this like force of reason kind of just be there in the background throughout. So, I mean, the taking of the tapeworm's not that big a deal, really. She just kind of swallows this egg thing. Obviously, the disgusting stuff comes at the end, which we'll get to, but she's constantly like feeling hungry, of course, and she's constantly kind of like their stomach's rumbling throughout as the movie goes on and on.
Ultimately, it does have like a really cool, gnarly payoff, but it also just sets up so much tension because every time like I heard her stomach making noises, I was like, especially when they're at the ball, it was like, oh no, something's gonna happen. Like there's gonna be just some crazy explosion somewhere.
Yeah, either vomit or poop or something. Like there's going to be something happening here. It'll be like Carrie, but it'll be like a self-inflicted thing where she's just going to like, water fountain out vomit and it'll all come back down on herself or something. Who needs Nancy Allen with the pig's blood when you've got your own tapeworm doing the work? So yeah, so there's a lot of like her, and there's a sequence as well. I think it's just after she's been with her sister and explained that she has this tapeworm and she's got an antidote for it, but the tapeworm will eat all the food she's eaten, so she won't even. And obviously this is extreme, but it's also this idea of because there's a sequence as well where like they all sit down to dinner. I think it's the same scene where Cinderella complains that her dad's not been buried yet, and like Elvira's looking around the table and like her sister's got a slice of fish, like I think Cinderella's got like, it's maybe more of a salad, but it's quite a healthy big size of a salad. And then she looks down at her plate and it's like a bowl of water with 3 slices of orange in it because she has to lose weight. And it's just like, all right, here's your 10 calories. Hope you enjoy that for the day. Soon after she's talked to her sister about the tapeworm, she hears some guys talking, and it turns out to be the prince. This is the first time we see him for real in the movie, because up until this point we see him in her fantasy sequences, but this is the first time we see him for real. And he's with 2 friends who are being very crude. I alluded to this earlier. They're talking about, which type of girl do you like, a virgin or someone who's experienced? And they're making like crude comments and whatever. Now the prince just happens to be pissing, right? He's sort of over by a tree. And Elvira's like watching and she's staring at his ass and like the camera focuses on it. But she slips and makes a noise. And the prince turns around and he's not like embarrassed or anything. He's just kind of like, oh, there's a person there. And then the other guys notice her and they make a line like, oh, do you like seeing the prince with his cock out or something to that? And then one of them starts like doing like a blowjobbing his bottle of beer that he's got. He starts like sucking on it. And the prince turns, looks at her and goes, I don't want to F that. And then that makes her run away, like, upset and sad and like more determined than ever to like, and she's got her face mask on, so she won't be recognized again, at the ball in a couple of months. But it's like, okay, I'm like, is ending up with this guy even a good thing? Because it sounds like he just wants to sleep around as well. It doesn't sound like he's saved himself for this marriage that's coming up. It sounds like he's been gallivanting and planting his seed wherever he feels like until now. So I don't even know if it's a good thing to end up with the prince at this point.
Yeah. Again, it's kind of funny, like the way people kind of constantly presenting themselves as something they're not. So like, yeah, the prince is trying to like, or at least in Elvira's head, like, he comes off as this like romantic poet who, because that book of poems she's reading, I thought she said the prince wrote that, right? Like that was his poems.
Yeah, she at least thought he did. I mean, who's to say?
So like, yeah, so it's like, oh, like, he's this beautiful soul who's like looking for love, but then like when you see him, he's just like a frat dude drinking beers and like, shooting birds or like whatever with their stuff and like making crude sex jokes, and it's like, oh yeah, this guy isn't like some hopeless romantic or whatever. So yeah, that was just like an interesting take on him.
Yeah, and there's a sequence soon after this where Elvira's in a bath and Agnes Cinderella is like there to help her, right? And she's not looking thrilled about it, but she's like, "Hey, feed me some of this like spaghetti or whatever it is, whilst I read more poems from this poetry book." And then eventually at one point it says something about a serpent, and she turns to Cinderella and says, "What do you think the serpent represents?" And Cinderella just deadpan looks at her and goes, "His penis." As if it's the most obvious thing in the world. And she's like, huh. I think it's also this idea that like Elvira is like thrusting herself into this and like doing all this horrible stuff to herself, and she's not even at the point yet to like even like get the fact that this poem's talking about sex. Like she's not even there yet. Mm-hmm. So she's like she's putting everything into it before she even understands what she's getting herself into, which is also kind of a sad element to it, I think, as well.
I don't think they never really mentioned like what age she is, right? Like I'm assuming the actor is probably like in their 20s or something.
No,
but
they do. Well, when she arrives at the ball, they announce her age. They actually say it out loud.
Oh, what do they say?
18.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
I assume Agnes is about the same age, maybe a year older or something like that. But
okay. Yeah. No. I was just thinking that's interesting because again, like, yeah, like. The way she's kind of played sometimes, it's like, it definitely has this like, naive. She's kind of like naive, and I don't know. If that seems about right for her age, or if she is just someone's kind of like, I don't know, a bit sheltered or doesn't really know, much about the real world or whatever.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning that when the mom comes up with a guy who's got like a trunk, and he's like, "Oh, I'm your good fairy," and it's like a big dress that's inside there, right? And she's all like excited to see it, and he makes these comments, and he also like he notices Cinderella and starts making comments about her and says, "Oh, you must be the whore," and like he basically forces a kiss on her, and she pushes him away. But it's all again very just like, oh, he thinks he can just do this and get away with it. The mum says something to the effect of, "You have no idea what this cost me," but later on it sounds like she takes him to her bedroom. And it kind of sets up this now thing that is kind of brought back up again a couple times, that she's now just like having sex with men, maybe to pay for things specifically. But it very much sounds like she's at a point where she's like, okay, I can't get a husband now, so I'm just going to get things in return for sex. And that's kind of, because there's a really prominent point near the end of the movie when just before Elvira leaves, where she's with another man, a younger man even. It's like one of the guys that, I think it's one of the prince's friends.
I could be wrong, but was he the, like, I forget what they said exactly, like a fish baron or something that she's introduced to at the ball? I thought it might be the same guy, but I could be wrong.
Oh, he keeps asking if you like oysters or fish or shrimp or yeah, that one. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But there's a really, again, very kind of like provocative looking scene where it's very clear she's about to give a blowjob, and she sort of looks at her daughter and then just goes to do it anyway. And it's just kind of like, oh, this is the life that she's sending you down. If you revolve your entire life around getting things from men, and that's the only way to get by, this is the end result of that, potentially, giving your mother's teachings. And it's kind of like this big final warning before she finally decides to leave at the end. So, I just thought I'd mention that here, because this is kind of the real start of that kind of pivot point or branch off for the mother character. So the other big thing around this part, though, is that when Cinderella like opens a trunk of her own and sees this blue dress that she wants to wear, Elvira sees it and is like, "Wait, you can't go to the ball. Why are you going to the ball?" And she starts getting really jealous. And this is where she kind of, I would say, does the first kind of villainous thing in the movie, which is that she grabs Cinderella's dress and tears it so she can't go to the ball. It's like, oh, this competition's, I can't have you, like, taking this from me. She's become too obsessed and too, like, hell-bent on, like, succeeding.
Yeah, I would say, like, up until that point in the movie, like, even though she was making, like, bad choices, you never really felt like, oh, she's evil or anything, or like or whatever. Like, you still had sympathy for it. Yeah, this was kind of the first point. Well, I guess maybe she had like some snide remarks and stuff at Cinderella here and there, but this was like the first point where you truly felt like, oh, okay.
And I still think evil would maybe be a harsh term. She's still kind of a product of her condition, so I wouldn't say, oh, she's just an evil like entity, like outright. But like this was definitely more of a like a proactive. She did something malicious here to try and take away the competition. This idea that Agnes Cinderella is just kind of naturally pretty and she's naturally kind of appealing to people and whatever. So I like. But anyway, we're getting close to the ball by this point in the movie, and you know they're all going to get presented, and they've squeezed Elvira into her dress.
And real quick too, I don't know if I missed this, but she also has to get like a wig because she starts losing her hair.
Yes, that's actually the end of the bathtub scene. Like she starts like pulling her, not pulling her hair, but she starts noticing her hair falling out, and the guy with the dress who comes to give her that. Like notices the hair and says, "Oh, we'll take care of that." And him and the mum put on this blonde wig and then smile and say, "See, everything will be perfect. You look amazing." And I'm like, "Are you not concerned that her hair's falling out at 18? Because that feels like a pretty big red flag here, maybe a warning sign."
So that's my big question because I wasn't sure if I missed something, but yeah, they never really get into why it's falling out. Like I wasn't sure if it could be a condition of like the tapeworm or just everything going on, or
I just assumed it was a tapeworm, or maybe you could argue it's the stress of everything going on. But but I think it was more just this idea of like this is what she's put herself through, and then the added idea that the mom and this guy just aren't concerned. We'll just cover it with a wig. Who cares? I don't care. My daughter's losing her hair, and I'm like, you know what? Like, you know, the prince might notice if this all works, and he takes off the wig at some point, he might notice. That the hair's missing later on. Just a thought, but
like what's their wedding night gonna be like? Like, okay, we can finally get down to business. Hold on, let me just take off my wig and also throw up this tapeworm. Like, the prince is probably gonna start having second thoughts.
I assume the tapeworm she would do that maybe away from him, you know, when she she has a chance. That said though, when she's at the ball and she has to run off because her stomach starts rumbling, you're like, oh god, what's this going to be? And I was actually kind of surprised because I thought she was just going to vomit. I didn't expect her to vomit up like multiple tapeworm eggs. The idea that the tapeworm's been laying eggs in there and she has to vomit them all out.
And I kind of thought like, okay, this is the payoff for the tapeworm stuff.
Oh no,
no, we get so much more.
It gets worse, and it's not even the next gross thing, because the next gross thing is she goes all saw on her feet in a minute, but we'll get get to that, because the mom's like, hey, okay, the prince is taking an interest in this mysterious blonde who's shown up with the face mask, because Cinderella shows up in her dress, but she's got like this sort of shawl thing kind of covering her, which I guess is that always a part of the story? I guess it must be, because they always do the thing where, oh, I need to find who this slipper fits. So I guess he doesn't know her face, right? Usually,
like in the original Disney version, which again, that's just mostly what I have to go by. Like you can still see her face, but I just think the idea is, like, you know, you see her face, but her hair's done up, and she's wearing this big fancy dress, and you know, she's just all decked out, and then, you know, at the stroke of midnight, once everything reverts and she's back to like her raggedy clothes and, you know, covered in dirt and stuff, that I guess that's what makes her unrecognizable. But I thought this was like a better explanation, because like obviously even if she looks like a different out of clothes or whatever, you'd still recognize her face.
Yeah, which I suppose we should mention that actually before the ball, we do actually kind of get the fairy godmother scene, to an extent.
So this was pretty unexpected, because I figured we were doing a more grounded approach. So this, like, actually having some like kind of magical surrealness like coming in. If
it wasn't for the dress fixing itself, well, I say fixing itself, there's some like bugs that kind of sew it back together. Yeah. Which I guess is interesting, because thematically, like, the main character does keep seeing maggots and worms in places more and more as the movie goes on. So this idea that the things she keeps seeing are actually helping her rival is maybe kind of a symbolic thing. But if it wasn't for the fact that the dress gets fixed, I would be like, oh, this is in her head. She's just having like a bad dream or something, and she's getting motivated to go to the ball. But the dress did get ripped and it did get fixed, so here we are.
And this is actually like really cool. And again, I don't always go for like, oh, let's do like the more horrific version of this fairy tale or whatever. Because like again, in the Disney version, you know, something similar happens, but it is more like Cinderella is so nice. She's friends with all the animals. So you have like these cute little cartoon mice and birds and stuff that help sew up her dress. So I like this version though, where it's like, she's just like so completely lost and depressed. And she's just like, you know, at her father's corpse where, you know, she's just like having this breakdown. And then it's like the maggots from the corpse are the ones that like fix the dress. Like it was a fun visual. And then like also just like a funny, like cool, dark take on, you know, that story part.
Also, I think the fairy godmother is just her mother. I think she calls her mum when she shows up. So that's another little change there as well. So, and she did pray to her mum earlier on when she's at her father's corpse. She's like, "Mum, please don't let this be my fate. Don't let this be my life. Like, you know, this is awful. Help me, please."
Yeah. And then I'm not sure, like, again, I only really have the like Disney kids version to go by. For all I know, like this could be the actual stuff that happens in the original story. Cause you know, those like fairy tales are always like darker than, you know, the cartoons and stuff make them out to be.
Yeah, I don't even know. Like, is there an official, this is the oldest, like, most pure version of Cinderella in existence? Is that a thing that exists? Maybe it is. I don't know. But, I mean, because most people will probably be more familiar with the Disney version, I assume.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, like, and it's more notable as well that when Cinderella does show up, the prince was picking Elvira for the dance. Like, he was, like, you know, taking her out to the dance floor. It was going that way. So she is literally ditched by the prince for Cinderella the second that she shows up. So like he's like, oh, I get why this would really hurt her feelings after a movie of being told she's not good enough. And she finally feels like her nose is fixed. She's lost weight. People are commenting on it. The dance instructor earlier on in the film was like sort of like grabbing her neck, like flab, and be like, oh, you need to try more, look how fat you are. And then just before the ball, she's like trying to grab it and she can't because it's too tight, and she's like, aha, you've put in work, you've done this, you've pulled this off. And it's like, yeah, all right, yeah, congratulate that. So that's a healthy approach to life.
I do think it's kind of funny that, like, you know, the mom seemed so dead set, like, no, you have to marry the prince. And then once she kind of sees like the prince is, you know, dancing with Cinderella, she's just kind of like, yeah, you know, there's like a lot of other people here too. Like start talking to this guy. And I think maybe that's when she introduced him to like the fish baron or whatever, which I thought was just like a funny scene.
Yeah, she's like, hey, there's like 50 other wealthy men out there. Go and marry one of them. The prince was obviously the ideal scenario, but like any one of these guys is fine. Also, mother in this scene where she's saying all this is right next to the eggs that's just been vomited up, and the mother shows no concern at all for what's just happened. Like, she is oblivious to the torment side of what her daughter's going through. It's all just about chin up, go out there, you know, tits out, and grab a man.
Words to live by.
Oh yeah, so we should not live by those words. The prince obviously does the whole thing where Cinderella realizes midnight's coming. She was told her carriage would turn into a pumpkin if she doesn't get out there in time, so she runs off. Her slipper's left behind, and he's like, hey, must find who this slipper fits, right? Because that's the whole Cinderella bit.
And what's nice about this too is I feel like they kind of speed run like all the stuff we're familiar with. Like, there wasn't a big dramatic scene of like her running off and him finding the slipper. Like, it's basically just his like guard or butler or whatever kind of just picking up the shoe and being like, oh, you know, whoever fits this shoe, the prince will marry. Like, oh no,
it definitely presents the story in a way where you assume you're familiar with the gist of Cinderella, right? We don't have to go into all the details and explain all those story beats, right? We can just have him hold up the slipper and say that he's looking for whoever it fits, and we know what he's doing, and that's all fine. And immediately, you know, Elvira's like, I need to fit that slipper. I need to fit that thing. Which leads us to our scene. So while the mom's back with the younger guy, and they're clearly just because you can hear them having sex in the other room, she's like, I need to fit into that slipper. So she gets, you know, the other one, because she finds because obviously one did come home with Cinderella. She finds the other one and she puts her foot next to it, and like her foot's so much bigger than this slipper, right? It's not even got a chance of fitting in there. And she picks up, and it's actually, I think she has a fight with Cinderella first here before she even gets to this. There's like a struggle between them.
Yeah, and she's like chasing her with I think the meat cleaver at that
she
point.
Is, yeah, you're right.
It's So at this point, it's kind of like, okay, kind of starting to feel
evil,
hard to feel sorry for. Yeah, like, and then it's funny too. Like, yeah, I think as she's chasing her, and like seemingly, it almost seems like she's about to kill Cinderella. And I think that's like when the mom and her boy toy pop out, and then again the mom is like so checked out that like she's not even doesn't even seem alarmed that like her daughter's trying to murder Cinderella. She's just kind of like, oh, just relax, will you? Like, calm down. And like she just barely registers any reaction.
She's left with a meat cleaver though, and she's like, my foot's too big for this shoe. I'm going to, and she has like a sort of just a little slice first, where you just get like a little bit of blood coming out the top of her, like because it's basically just across all the base of her toes at the top, and it's like, okay, that was kind of gnarly, and the blood coming out. But then she gets determined, and she like puts her foot like on top of something, so their toes are hanging off the edge, and she like hits them really hard, and then she screams out in pain, and the mum and sister come in to see what's going on. And the sister's very concerned and like, oh God, what are you doing? She like immediately starts putting like a tourniquet, like to try to like stop the flow of blood. Like she's being again very resourceful and smart and knows what to do and like clearly concerned. The mother's like looking at the slipper, looking at the foot and going,
this line.
You did the wrong foot. The prince has the left one. You've done the right one because that's the one that you've got here. And I was actually thinking this, like, did she remember to do the other foot? Because the other one's the one he's got. So she's like, yeah, you're right. Your foot is to fit into that slipper. So the mother's immediately gun-ho about helping her. And the mother actually, like, because when they come in, her toes are all kind of dangling off, right? They're all just kind of like split off. So the mother does that thing where she just chops a couple more times and then sort of like, you know when you're on a chopping board and then you spread the things to the side with a knife? She basically does that. She chops off what's left of the toes and then just goes whoop, off it goes. And she's like, all right, get that other foot ready. It's time to do the correct foot now.
They even do like a really close up shot of the toes, like when she first cuts them, and you just see them dangling. It's really gnarly.
It's definitely grotesque. They really go for it. And again, it all kind of fits into this idea of like what she's willing to do to be seen, how desperate she is, because this has been presented as the only path forward in her life for success is to get the rich husband, and that's what she's trying to do.
Yeah.
And then you mix that in with the adolescent crush of like reading the poetry and all that, and it's it's a combination for disaster, right? So, of course, this was never going to work because when she wakes up in the morning and she pulls off the covers and we see her feet wrapped in bandages and they're all red with blood. Yeah. Okay, first of all, did you not think the prince wasn't going to notice the bloody socks as you try and put your foot into the slipper? Right? But also, we find out that she can't stand up. Of course she can't stand up. Her toes have all been cut off. She's like crawling on the floor in pain and agony, and she can barely move. And like she hears outside that the prince is here looking for whoever owns the slipper, and her crawl to try and get down the stairs, like she ends up falling down the stairs. She can barely move around. She chips a tooth. She gets badly bruised, and she can't get to the door. She's like upside down, basically looking at the door, when she finally sees that Cinderella's already speaking to him. He's already put the slipper on, and they're off to live happily ever after. Like she gets her happy ending. And she's left there in pain, her toes cut off, her mother's with a young boy toy not caring about her. And it's the sister, of course, that comes in here at the end and is like, hey, we should get out of here. And she ends up helping help her crawl out to like a carriage, and she packs her stuff with her. And they go off to be on their own. And I think that's kind of like an almost weirdly hopeful element at the ending of like, oh, maybe they'll get away from all this and they can just live something resembling a healthy life, because our sister at least seems to have a solid head on her shoulders and a good perspective of the world. So, but of course, I've skipped over one notable thing. I realize that. We're going to talk about it. Don't worry.
Okay. It's just so funny to see how she starts and where she ends up, because I don't know, like I guess the moral of the story is like try to be happy with who you are. Like all these things she does to try to quote unquote fix her, or make herself, I guess look how she wants people to look at her or whatever. And then where's that get her at the end of the movie? No toes, balding, chipped tooth, just like all these things where it's like, okay, now like you're like you kind of finally match, like, I guess how you I don't know, like people were treating you at the start of the movie or whatever.
In a way, yeah. Like, it feels like, oh, she's actually turned into something ugly here because she did all this to herself by the end. So the big thing is that before they leave, though, in the preparation to leave, it's like, hey, we have to take care of this tapeworm because the stomach keeps rumbling. We have to deal with this. And I was like, oh God, what are we going to see here, right? But she takes the antidote, right? And they've got like a dish of milk out for the thing to fall into, thinking, oh, I'll want to eat when it gets out. And it starts to come out of her mouth after some, wincing and screaming. And the sister grabs the head of it and starts to pull it. And keeps pulling. And this was already gross. This was already pretty disgusting. I hate disgusting stuff, like either being eaten or coming out of mouths. I'm not a fan of it.
I really dislike vomiting in movies. I don't know. It always grosses me out. Like I just hate the sound that it makes, and the way it looks. And so this was this was getting to me too.
Yeah, pretty nasty. But the sister keeps pulling, and eventually gets stuck. And she's like giving it like a little tug, and it's like not cutting. Like, oh God, what's this stuck? Is she gonna like pull out an organ or something here? Like what's this stuck on? And then she keeps pulling, and it's like, as long as it's been, because it's been like, probably like 6 feet long already, right out of her mouth. Yeah. Apparently there was a lot more of it folded up, right? Because then she just yanks it, and like it almost looks like octopus coming out of her mouth, just because there's so many like strands of this tapeworm all folded up, until it all comes out. And this is another time where I had to kind of look away for a second, because I'm like, you know what, this is going to make me vomit. I cannot keep looking at this. This is disgusting. And I get it, it's perfect. This is her reaping what she sowed, and doing what she did to herself to try and like do all this stuff, and look where it's got her. But like, god damn, it was horrific.
Yeah, for a second I thought like, oh, are they saying that like maybe it got entangled with like her intestines or something, because there's just so much that was coming out, and I was like, oh no, that is just all the worm. Jesus. Yeah.
So the vile stuff, and I guess I never even like really thought about the fact that I knew what a tapeworm was. I don't think I'd ever seen one before, so I assume this is accurate, at least maybe not the length, but at least the visual of what it looks like.
I feel like I've heard stories of this before. Like, I don't know if maybe there's like some horror anthology or something, or maybe like an urban legend, but like I have heard like something before about like, oh yeah, someone takes a tapeworm and then to lose weight or whatever, and it like grows and grows and stuff. But I mean I don't know. I do think they get fairly big, so honestly I'm not sure if this is like completely out of the realm of possibility or whatever. But yeah, it's quite a sight.
Yeah, it's bloody gross. It's and to be fair, like the movies, all the scenes that are kind of gross or like heavy, whether it's the eyelash scene, the nose, the tapeworm, the toes being cut off or chopped off, I should say, like all of that stuff is good. In terms of like, it all hits really hard, and multiple of them I had to actually look away for a second because it was too disgusting to really stick with. So like
it's effective.
It's effective, yeah. I mean, it gets the horror of what it is across, and it's kind of the horror of what's expected of a woman. And obviously, this is set in a time period where it's like literally all there is for these characters. It's very like everything's stripped down to just this, and it does kind of make you look at like the fairy tales a little bit differently and go, yeah, it's kind of like the world that's presented in these stories does kind of feel a bit problematic when you think about the actual context of like this is the only hope for your future is to find the prince to marry you, kind of thing. And there's obviously the double standard element as well, where like no one seems to care about what the guys are doing, or that they're all doing whatever they want. They're rich guys. They can do whatever they say, like they can say whatever they want, whatever. Whereas, all the women, no, we have to work really hard. We have to be virgins. We have to work really hard to be perfect and presentable. We have to dance for them. We have to, because that's one of the scenes at the ball is like Elvira's like sort of the head dancer in a little presentation for the prince, and it's so surreal and the music's so good that I was really into it. But it's again, it's another example of just like all this effort that needs to go in from one side to be presented to the other. So yeah,
it does a good job of like it obviously feels like, oh, this is very powerful for the time, but obviously still very relevant today. Like, there's obviously all these like double standards and like, ideals of beauty that, women, especially like, mostly women like have to like, live up to, or people are expected, them to like look a certain way. And there's all these things that like, you do. And so it's, obviously like a very timely thing. But it does a good job of getting it across.
Yeah, the whole idea of like having to go find a rich prince to marry, like obviously things aren't literal like that anymore, but all the other parts of it, all the underpinnings of it are all still true to some extent. The pressures of you have to look like this because this is what all the, these days it's more like, oh, this is what everyone in an advert looks like. This is what everyone in a movie looks like. This is, the perfect smile, the perfect figure, the perfect this, the that, and
like nowadays it's kind of like, like probably a lot of that is like how you present yourself on like social media and people having to, have like the perfect like, camera shot and filter or whatever to make you look as presentable to get like the most likes and stuff on whatever. Like, there's a lot of, things you can kind of make a case for it to, comparing to today.
Yeah, well, which is why I think the story was made, because it's like, oh, they can take this classic story and kind of say, yeah, but can we kind of examine that from all the... And it's not to say that Cinderella, the base story, necessarily has problematic elements in it per se, but just this idea of like, we can look at it from this other perspective and sort of maybe consider all of the problems that we can fit into it, from like today, or even just from today. I mean, from any time really, but like, just like, hey, what about all this pressure to be perfect? What about all this pressure from all these other characters and the system that's here? Like, Cinderella gets to win in that story, but the system's kind of sucks to begin with, and that's kind of what this movie is getting at.
And then even with Cinderella, it's like, yeah, like she wins, but then also, I don't know, like I do kind of wonder, like, how much does she really want to be with the prince? Like, is she still thinking about the stable boy?
It did stick out to me, Tim, when he picks her up after testing the slipper. He's like, oh, send message. I have found, my fair maiden, and I will marry her. He doesn't ask her to marry him. He just says, I am going to marry her. So it did stick out to me that she doesn't even actually get a choice. Now, it seems like it's what she wants. She smiles. It seems like, this is the fairy tale happy ending, but he doesn't actually ask if she wants that. He just like, no, I've decided I'm having you, and you don't get a say in the matter anymore. Is this how your proposal went? Did you just pick her up and be like, we shall wed?
Yeah, more or less. After I vomited up my tapeworm, and
then you took her to the hospital to get her toes reattached.
Yeah. That's it. Same old boring story.
Yeah.
I couldn't help but laugh at the very like final shot of the movie where they're showing some like birds and stuff, and then I forget, like, were they like picking at like some was it like maggots or something on the ground? And then just like big words on the screen, which I'm guessing this is Norwegian for the end or whatever, but it just says slut on the screen.
No, my subtitle did say the end, so
yeah.
Yes.
So it's just like a very weird, like, especially with like, like some of the things they had been saying like earlier in the movie and stuff, to just end it with like slut, or I mean maybe it's pronounced like sloot or something.
I would guess sloot. Yes. I think that's just a happenstance of the language, not anything intentional per se. I think the movie has like a really good energy to it, and that's something the visuals and the music really do, is that it always feels like there's a good sense of momentum to it. Yeah. No, I was like, I think early on I was kind of like, okay, I think this is quite good, and I think I'm into this. And then by the end, it never lost me, and it did some really memorable sequences, and I'm like, yeah, there was a lot of style in this. It definitely is like this director, like, you know, whenever she's doing something next, I'm going to be paying attention because I think this was really well crafted in how it was put together.
Yeah, it feels like there's a lot of confidence in the filmmaking. That, you know, it looked good, it sounded really good, and yeah, it just sucked you in. You know, again, if like I said, it took me a little while to get into it, but I mean, once I was into it, I, you know, got sucked in pretty well. And then, I mean, maybe if I go back and watch it now, having more of an idea what it is, then maybe it'll be something where I'm more on board, like, yeah, from the very start. But absolutely, the next thing, you know, the director does, I'm going to be interested in. One little bit that I thought was kind of funny too, that we didn't mention, but when the whoever the person is that works for the prince, his assistant or whatever, like when he first comes to the house to invite them to the ball, and like Agnes, you know, gives her full name. She's like, Agnes von blah 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 blah, and then like Elvira, like, you know, runs out, and he's like, name, and she's like, Elvira, and then he's like, Von, and she's just like looking at him, and he just keeps going like, Von. And then Agnes is like, she's my stepsister, and then he just writes like Elvira stepsister, and then like, even later on, they
Elvira Von stepsister. You got Von.
So like even they're even like calling her out as being like a stepsister, and then I just thought it was really funny when they like call it back like later on when they're at the ball announcing the girls, and like, and now announcing Elvira Von stepsister.
Yeah, no, I mean, the movie is funny. Like, there's definitely lots of little bits of dark humor and just your quirky side characters because of the way they present themselves. The doctor, of course, and I actually don't know if he is a doctor. A doctor may be a generous term here, but, you know, the guy doing the nose job and that stuff. Like, I think those performances stick out as being just kind of oddball enough that it kind of like makes them very memorable. Or even the guy who gives her the dress later on, like, he feels really sleazy, and like when they put her in the dress, he just like reaches his hand in and picks up her boobs to sort of like fit them into the dress better to show off some cleavage. But I'm like, all right, just get your hand in there, I suppose. Yeah. And the mum's just watching like, yes. In fact, when they first appear, they walk in and she's like naked. You know, she's standing there naked, and she like realizes, and she like covers up, and then she's like, nope, take this off. You're putting on a dress. Like, this is what we're doing now. So, no, it definitely feels like she feels like a piece of meat that's been put out on display at certain points. But they've conditioned her so much to be very willing and even thankful for it, which is I guess the real sad, tragic part of the whole like story. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, Ugly Stepsister. It's a good movie. Tim, what are you going to rate the Ugly Stepsister? The movie, not the appearance of the Ugly Stepsister, just to be clear.
Of course, that'll be for our bonus up. Yeah, I really don't have many complaints. Again, I thought it told a good story, had compelling characters. You know, I did think the look was good. I wouldn't say I was like super impressed by it, but like I did think it looked good. But I think what I was more impressed by again was the music. Like, I thought the music was just, you know, really fitted and you know, like kind of sucked me in. And then the horror elements you know, were there. They were gross and unsettling, but again, that's, you know, what it's going for. So yeah, it's a really nice little package. I think I'll give it I'll say it was like, yeah, pretty great. I think I'll go with in just a straight 8, but I don't know, this might be one I kind of think about. Like, I could even potentially go up like a notch or something if the more I think about it, or on a rewatch. But yeah, I'm gonna go with an 8 right now.
I feel Yeah, I'm definitely around the same kind of level. I might go to the 8.5. It's definitely in that like, you know, great to very great kind of territory. Because I did, you know, it sounded great, it looked great, like it looks like a film, it looks like we're in really nice sets or real locations. It's just the light's pretty strong at several points throughout the movie. I constantly feel like I was looking at a movie and not something that's just thrown together for Netflix, which is an argument that I would say, you know, too many movies feel like these days, even if they aren't made for Netflix.
And those ones that are made for Netflix probably have like 10 times the budget of this, I would assume.
You would assume. I have no idea. Like, but yeah, there's almost an assumption because it's, you know, outside of one of the bigger countries making movies that it probably is a low budget. But at the same time, I imagine that a lot of these locations, because it is in, you know, I assume shooting somewhere in Norway. Maybe it isn't, but I assume that they're like, you know, maybe there's like a sort of like, hey, yeah, we want to help local movies, so hey, like we won't charge you too much to shoot in our mansion. Like, here, go and shoot.
Or like, or even like, you know, I feel like a lot of like foreign movies too, like the, you know, government will have programs where like, you know, they'll actually, you know, pay for like some of the movie or something. Like I feel like that's a big thing they do in Canada a lot. But it, you know, it's not a dig at this movie where I'm trying to say like, oh, this movie was probably cheap. It's more a dig at like, yeah, those Netflix movies that are like, this movie costs like $200 million, and then you watch it and it's like, why does it look like shit?
Oh yeah. I mean, Electric State's one of the most expensive movies ever made, and I cannot fathom why. So that's a good example. Yeah, I think I will go to the 8.5. I think I was
nice.
It drew me in very quickly. I was constantly into like its technical merits, but I was also into its dark comedy and the progression of the main character. I think if you told me before I watched it, it was a dark take on Cinderella, that probably would have made me less excited. Not that I would have avoided watching it or anything. I'm sure it would have still grabbed me in the same way. But I didn't know that going in, so I didn't have any sort of preconceived notions. But no, it was very good. I'm glad we ended up doing it, because I think, you know, it's going to be a contender on that top 10 when we're doing it for 2025 in a few months. So there you go. That is The Ugly Stepsister. Next time on Screams After Midnight, we should, all goes to plan, a couple of weeks out for us yet, but we should be doing 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. That should be next week's episode, so look forward to that. But yeah, you can, of course, support Screams After Midnight over at Patreon, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. Helps out a bunch if you do. You get bonus stuff. We do a bonus episode most months. We'll sneak out a bonus episode, usually something sillier. We do even more Scream segments most weeks, I would say. In fact, just last week, maybe when this goes out, our big epic 2026 preview, Even More Screams, went out. Now, normally Even More Screams is like, you know, 20 minutes, 30 minutes of us talking about whatever top 5 or silly horror topic. That was a 2.5 hour episode of us going through all the known release dates for horror movies of 2026. We've done that the last few years in January, so if you want to check that out, that is on Patreon or via YouTube membership. But anyway, all support is greatly appreciated. Thanks to everyone who already does. It really does help keep everything coming. Not just this show, but all the other movie shows from Male Fuzz Movies. So go and have a look-see and see if you're interested. But otherwise, that is us. Like, subscribe, ding the bell, all that usual bollocks. 5 stars on your podcast app, all helps. All right, Tim, you ready to take off some toes and go to bed?
Yeah, it sounds about that time. Hopefully, we'll wake up and meet our princes in the morning.
Hopefully. This has been Screams After Midnight. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you next time. Keep watching scary movies. Goodbye.